Hey, how's everyone doing today?
Great!
Man, you guys always have the best energy. Is that actually like Colby Dean from Once Upon a Time? Colby Dean? That was a whole lot of muted yes. I love it. Welcome, welcome. Glad to have you guys all here. So yesterday morning I got back from Ukraine. And we had a very successful mission. This was our second mission this year. The mission was at least 5 times more impactful. I'll share just a little bit with you because I think it ties into today's training. You guys did good last week. And we got some pipeline building. Raise your hand if you know your pipeline is really developing and stepping up in a good way. I know a couple weeks ago we had marketing. We had a couple of kerfuffles in marketing, something that hasn't happened for years. And we had a couple of slower leads on weeks and some second chances. And last week, you were probably feeling the awesome impact of what went down. How many of you saw that last week? Some really great improvement there. Some good things happening. So I want to talk a little bit about the game of excuses, right? What is an excuse? Who can tee me up with the definition of what an excuse is?
A lie. Too busy.
It's a lie.
Story you tell yourself.
It's a story that we tell ourselves.
Shift in responsibility.
It's a shift in responsibility. It's a cop-out. It's victimhood. There's a scapegoat. And by the way, when there's an excuse, inevitably you're only blaming one of two people. Yourself or somebody else. Something or you. And it's interesting because some people, when things don't go the way they want, they love to turn the finger at themselves and say, I suck, I'm a failure, I didn't step up again, I didn't do what I was supposed to. And you're either that guy or gal, or the opposite is, my neighbor sucks, the leads suck, this thing happened, this thing outside of my control. And so we're shifting the blame to some other thing. So we either blame us or we blame others, and it is only one of those two options. So do me a favor. You're going to raise your hand on one of these, historically speaking, because I know some of you in this room are dang near perfect and would never do anything like that ever again. But in your life, when you have been in excuse land, what are you more prone to? For those of you that are like, oh yeah, I turn inwardly and blame me, raise your hand if you do it that way. Okay, a lot of hands. For those of you that go external and blame someone else, put your hand up if it's somebody else. Cool, it's just one or the other, right? Until you learn the game of full accountability. Full accountability means that there is never a reason to point a finger either at yourself or somebody else in the blame game. If you can't take accountability for everything that happens, you'll only ever achieve a small measure of your potential. And I think that's the game that we're all in right now. Like, what is your potential here? Raise your hand if you're clear that your role here is to grow, financially develop yourself, and make enough money that you can invest and do other things so you can create your own freedom in life. Make some noise if you're excited about that. And I tell everybody, it's like, if you're not in a job where you can earn multiple 6 figures, it's going to be really hard to save the money that you need to invest. Because that last book that I came out with, the 5th book that's called Have It All, dude, that is a blueprint on how you become a billionaire. That's what this book is right here. This is a blueprint on how anyone without being some weird tech genius, I came up with some brilliant thing. Like, this is how anyone becomes a billionaire. It's a system. It's a what? System. And you basically just follow the system, but for the system to work, you gotta put something in the tank of some of those vehicles, and it does take money to make money. And it can be someone else's, but for the most part, you ain't gonna get anyone else's money until you go first and lead from the front by putting in some of your own dough. And you can't put any meaningful money into anything unless you're in a job where you can actually produce some excess. Does this make sense?
Yes.
So it's not okay to make 50 grand a year. It's not okay to make 80 grand a year because it's really hard in a year to set anything aside that will get you anywhere. If I go back to my humble beginnings, working on a call sales floor, I got to the point where I was making on average, my 4th year that I worked there, I made 135 grand. But that exact same year, my real estate produced passively 145 grand. So my income that year was almost $300,000, but more than half of it came from outside passive investment activity. That meant that when I quit my job, I wasn't hurting my family. Because even back then, my expenses were still, probably only $60,000, $70,000 a year. So making almost 300 grand, only having 60,000 expenses. And it's because I got in a game that said, I don't need a nicer house. I don't need a nicer car. I don't need the nice things of life yet. everything I save needs to go towards what? Investing. So that my money can work for me, because if I can play that game for 5 years, I can have anything that I want. So I've been playing that game now for, I've been financially free for 16 years since I actually quit that job. 16 years, traveling the world, doing some cool stuff, riding along, owning private jets, living this amazing, incredible life. And that took me to Ukraine. And a few days ago, I was in Bakhmut, which is right on the eastern border. And we had split up into 2 missions, Bravo and Alpha. Bravo was staying behind in Kiev, and we were meeting with our partners, which included all sorts of refugee camps for displaced women and children that literally are starving unless they're able to get food and resources and supplies. Winter's coming. Winter is super heavy in Ukraine, so it's how do we get heating elements to them. Orphanages, literally visiting and taking care of and adopting orphanages where children have lost both parents from the war. And so they've lost everything. As well as our partners in what we do in ambulance work. In Ukraine, if you compare a Ukrainian hospital, which is very Eastern, old Soviet Union bloc, compared to Poland, which is in the UN, the hospital differences are real. And in Ukraine, when they don't have the ability to give you a procedure or surgery, you just hang out in the hospital till you die. And so there's no way to get them a surgery unless they're actually able to cross borders and get into Poland. But ambulances aren't fitted to keep people alive for more than 30 minutes. So we work with one of our partners. They have 3 ambulances. These ambulances are designed to keep people alive for 30 hours so that they can grab them anywhere in country and then take them out. Because there's no safe airspace, there's no helicopters, there's no medevac. And so they basically developed a medevac system to save these people's lives, burn victims, people that need treatment while in the vehicle for how many hours it takes to actually get them to where they can get a permanent surgery that can save their life. So we met with our partners there. So that's what Bravo team was up to. Alpha team was doing extractions. We work heavily with the Mozart group. This is special forces from around the world. And we found ourselves on this day in Bakhmut. We were a caravan, 2 groups. Charlie and Delta went in and did 3 humanitarian aid drops. We're talking about bringing in just truckloads of food. In Bakhmut, we brought in enough food just that day alone that doubled their food supply. And so they are going through these resources very heavily. And while we were doing our final HA drop, we got called that there was a need for extraction in a small town about 5 clicks south. And so within an hour of staging and preparing for this evacuation, there was now 12 people that wanted to come out and get rescued. And what's happening is you've got the Ukrainians on the left and the Russians on the right, and there's heavy artillery firing going back and forth, and there's on this knoll, there's this tiny little city, more of a neighborhood that's just caught in the middle. And they were catching shrapnel, they were catching bombs. One of their houses was totally destroyed. And so they're basically calling in. They don't have vehicles. It takes special type of vehicles to get in through these destroyed road systems to be able to extract and pull people out. And for my first Ukrainian mission, one of the things that I learned from Bucha and Irpin is that if the Russians win a territory, which is mostly what they've been doing for the majority of the war, the Russians will come in, they'll go into every household, and they'll kill everybody. But sometimes not before doing horrible, atrocious things. So these people's lives are entirely on the line. They're stubborn, they don't want to leave, but when the war's on their doorstep and they're hearing the shelling all day long and it actually starts hitting home, literally, that's when they call and they need help. And there's only one group in Ukraine that is doing these extractions right now. It's a beautiful group of men, mostly men, some women, that have military training, some of them at the highest level. They've got medical training. They're going in without weapons, and they're literally risking their lives every single day to pull these people to safety. In the last 5 months, we've been able to help hundreds of people get out because we're one of their sole supporters, main supporters in the work that they do. On this particular day, I went in with 7 people, and we had a chance to do the work of extraction. I was in the vehicle on the last couple of ride-alongs. I'll tell you, it was gnarly and hairy as we went into those neighborhoods and we found the people and we threw them in the back of our cars and we got them out of there. It took 4 runs to get everyone out because of our 6 vehicles, only one of them was equipped. By the time that was done, I'm like, dude, we're gonna buy you a couple more Land Cruisers fully stocked up. You guys need full rubber tires because we blew through 3 tires on the way out just from shrapnel everywhere. And that day we pulled 12 people out, we brought them to safety. And that's what these people do all day long. These are like real heroes. Like not Marvel stuff, like these are the real people that this is what they do. Our team leader, Steve, bravest man that I've ever met. The guy doesn't get paid, he doesn't get anything. He's just doing it because it's calling. And in that line of work, you don't have room for excuses. You got none. You have to take full accountability for everything. And so in the work that we do here, every one of us here is playing a game called, how do I separate myself from my excuses, challenge myself to go further and beyond, to do better, to perform better, to help more people, so that I can also be blessed with enough leftovers so that I can invest, so that 5 years from now, I can freaking have whatever life that I want. No confusion. Is everyone here enrolled in that game right now? Yes or yes?
Yes.
Yeah, and right now you're literally falling into one of two camps. The first camp is, I'm resting on my sword, I've grown all the growth, and I've been here for a while, and you're not gonna get more than what you're currently getting. That's a fixed mindset. I've grown enough, and most human beings grow a little bit, and they're like, woo, I'm tapped out, I've grown enough. And then you have to push into the other category where you're in a growth mindset. And a growth mindset is always growing, is always pushing, is always finding the next level. Does this make sense?
Yes.
For example, Fed did something crazy this year to the interest rates. On a regular basis, each quarter as they release the new rates, what has the Fed done every quarter this year? They've raised rates, and they said they're going to continue doing it next year. So right now, investment rates are landing around 6%. And we had 12 years since the 2008 debacle where we were used to like free money, where interest rates on a primary residence at its lowest was 2.8%. And an investment property might be 3.5 or 4%. So rates have gone up. If you don't adjust your language in your pitch to know how to combat that, you're gonna get a bunch of wannabe investors that are gonna talk themselves out of investing. How many of you have faced some of this, by the way? So by the way, here's a new challenge, something that wasn't there before. How many of you, in all honesty, feel that you do not yet have a perfect pitch response for how to handle that? Raise your hand. Okay, I'm seeing a third of the room that feels that way. Thank you for your honesty. Here's the truth. The interest rate conversation's been happening for how long? How long this year has it been happening that you're starting to have it on phone calls?
4 months.
4 months. So a third of you, 4 months later, are still, I don't have a perfect response. To you, you are still too much in a fixed mindset. What you're saying is, I could get better, but I'm okay not getting better. Now it sounds a little harsh, but I just want to be real. If you want to be financially free in 5 years, or in under even 10 years, you've got to grow on a daily basis, not a quarterly basis, not a monthly basis. Every day there should be a game for you. Every day there should be a challenge. Every day you should ask this one question: where do I suck the most? It could be your work ethic, where you're not dialing as much as you need to. It could be in overcoming objections. Like, no, I get to the money conversation and everything, but I get these 4 same objections, and shoot, I just kind of do a Hail Mary, cross my fingers, and I hope it turns out okay. Or I'm not setting as much as I feel like I should be setting. I'm just focusing on closing $1,000 and $2,000 packages. To some extent, those are all excuses. Raise your hand if you agree. So you get to choose how long you use a suboptimal approach before you level that game up. And here are the people who will always win the most. They have a tolerance for sucking this many times on the phone before they figure out how to fix it. And not a little bit, but all the way, because mastery is a choice. It's a what?
A choice.
So for example, here's what would suck. Someone says, interest rates have gone up, so investing is probably a bad idea. Here's a suboptimal response. No, I mean, you can still do well with real estate investing, even if interest rates go up. I mean, Raise your hand if you know that sucked, right? That was the best. None of you suck like that. I sucked the worst in that perfect example of what suckage looks like. So then what you got to do is you talk to 2 or 3 people and you level it up. And the next time it comes, it's like, dude, let's talk about this interest rate thing. I'm going to tell you right now that there's a lot of forms of investing that don't work as interest rates go up. One of the great things about working with Kris Krohn is that his system still works even where rates are at today, or even if they go up a little bit more. Raise your hand if that's a better response. Okay, but do you think that still represents mastery? No, let me share with you. I'm talking to a worrywart. How many of you know interest rates is on the worrywart mind? So I'm gonna go full preemptive on him, and I'm gonna get in this conversation and say, Murph, let me help you understand something right now. The reason at your age why you're at where you're at is because there's always a reason to not grow and go to the next level. But I believe we're talking on the phone right now, based on what you said a few minutes ago, that you're ready to finally have something work. Yes or yes? Yeah. Murph, let me help you understand something right now. In your mind, you've got to be thinking, there's so many reasons why this might not work. Let's talk about interest rates, right? They've gone up. You've seen that, yes? Does that concern you?
Very much.
Thank you. Let me share with you something. Did you know that Kris Krohn invented a real estate investing system that even before rates were dirt cheap or they've gone up, that even if interest rates are 18%, he still is whaling and crushing and creating multimillionaires? Did you know that? I'm gonna tell you right now, the reason why Kris's system works in up and down markets, or no matter what the Fed does, or no matter what happens in rates, on his track record of over 6,500 homes, $2 billion worth in real estate, is because he's developed a system that crushes through any of that. So interest rates to Kris Krohn, guess what? Not even a concern. And if it's not a concern for him, should it be a concern for you?
Not at all.
Okay, raise your hand if you think that that was high energy mastery level. So you have an obligation. If you ever know that you're suboptimal in any response, and you're choosing to be okay with that, what you're really saying is, well, I guess I'm okay with the income that I'm at. I guess I'm okay with $80,000 a year, $120,000 a year. And that's on you. But here's the mindset that you want to shift in. Your job is to destroy every single excuse in your personal life why you don't show up. That's what your job is. Because that training is not about making a lot of money here. If this is a stepping stone for where you go next, how many of you think that an excuse-free mindset is going to aid you in your next? I'll tell you, for me, I spent 4.5 years working in the sales industry. My investments made more money than my 6-figure job. That year that I left it and reclaimed all my time, I tripled my income that year as a business owner. And that's because I didn't have to worry about expenses. I didn't have to worry about making money, because money was made passively for me because of choices that I made. But I had to give something up to get that. And what I gave up was my fixed mindset. And by the way, it would have been way easier to stay in a fixed mind. It's always easier. And I challenged myself. Today, I've got to be better than yesterday. I'm on the phone. I got an objection. I overcame it, but I was a 9 out of 10. Not good enough. But Kris, I overcame the objection. Not good enough. If there's a 10 out of 10 out of there, I have an obligation to figure out how to represent that 10 out of 10. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sir.
By the way, if you develop this, it's not about learning how to overcome that objection. It's about developing mastery in your life because of this. You guys know what the 80-20 rule is, right? What's the 80-20 rule? 20% will make
80%.
How many of you think that happens here? That happens everywhere, and the difference between the 80 and the 20 is a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. But here's what most people don't talk about. Do you know what the difference is between the 98 and 2? You got 2% that are living off of 90% of all the world's wealth. But you can carry it out further. See, real mastery doesn't mean that you're 2 out of 100. That's 1 in 50. But what happens when you're 1 in 1,000? What happens when you push your skills and abilities to be 1 in 10,000 or 1 in 1,000,000? That's where you never get satisfied with where you're at. And you tell yourself there's always a better way to say it. There's always a higher energy or a better communicative strategy. There's always a better way to rock this game at a higher level. You get into that growth game where you are always hungry and never satisfied. Not to the detriment of your soul, but to know that the thing that feels best that you train and program in your life is to say, if there's a better way, I better find it, because I'm not here to be in the top 5 of this company. I'm not even here to be number 1. You should be number 1 when we have 1,000 people on the sales floor. If you have that mindset, and it's not about beating someone or being better than someone, but literally showing up as a leader in your life to eradicate every excuse, that's when you're gonna win in the game at the highest level possible. So here's my invitation this week. Get really clear. In fact, do it right now. I want you to out your pen and paper. If you're using your phone for notes, I want you to be super honest. Where are you suboptimal when you talk to humans? Like, there was a time in my life when I was scared to talk to powerful women that were high earners. They scared me. Who are the avatars? Who are the people that you don't like talking to? Or where's your financial barometer at? That it's like, well, when I talk to someone that makes X amount of money, I've noticed that I become a financial coward on the phone because I feel like, who am I to give this person this advice? Or When you talk credit cards, are you nervous to ask what are their credit cards and interest rates? Like, where are you suboptimal? Every day you should ask this question. You should know what they are, and you should always dedicate some of your time every day to learning an optimal approach. And trust me, there are people here to ask, how would you do this? Can I listen to you? Can we role play it together? Will you judge me? And then can I try it again? So that the next time I'm on the phone, I'm better equipped at rocking this and crushing this. Now, by the way, if you play that game in your relationships, if you play that game in your health, if you play that game in your spirituality, if you play that game in every area of your life, you can't help but, with every day, become a little healthier, a little wiser, a little kinder and friendlier, more powerful, wealthier. So fast forward 6 months, fast forward a year. You should love who you've become. Because the destination of freedom is cool, but the question is, who are you becoming in that journey? And for me, this culture is one where we want you to love your life. We want you to love your growth process, but it only works if you challenge yourself, and no one here is gonna crack a whip and say, you need to grow. Like, that's the truth. We're gonna remind you, we're gonna inspire you, we're gonna influence you, but only you can cause yourself every day to say, no, I'm going to prove that I'm gonna be a little better today in every category of life than the day before. It's totally doable. I've been playing that game for almost 2 decades. I'm just telling you, it's totally 100% doable. And for many of you, I'm preaching to the choir because you're an extraordinary group of people producing really great results. Final, guys. When I got out of that vehicle and we rescued the last couple and we shut the van door and watched all 12 of them packed in like sardines, and we had a flat tire. We did not have time to change it because the scene was too dangerous. So on that flat tire, we rolled miles out of town to get away from the artillery. And when it was all done, I sat and I thought, 12 lives. The 12 lives that we saved, that happens every single day here by virtue of our donation that we just were privileged to experience for a single day, that was made possible because I eliminated the excuses in my life. This is not about how much money you can earn here. That's a byproduct of who you become. Of course, the people that grow every day are rewarded with everything. Of course, if you grow enough, you get to have a strong, fit, healthy, sexy body. Of course, if you work hard at your core relationships every day with time, they improve and become more meaningful. Of course, if you challenge yourself to financially get smarter and better every single day, your wealth grows and expands. And in that journey, for you to have it all, you're gonna have to give up your excuses. So go on a search and destroy mission every single day and destroy them, because the life that comes after financial freedom for me is when life actually begins. My hope is that every one of you gets to live that life. Because when you're no longer obligated by bills and past financial commitments, and all the money rolls in whether you do or don't work, you can't help but ask the more meaningful questions of life. And when I came out of that convoy, I got to ask my next step. I got to ask a question that I positive I would not have gotten the answer on unless I hadn't had that opportunity. And it's a domino effect, a chain reaction that all stems back from eliminate every excuse in life. So find them, hunt them down, destroy them. Guys, let's have a kick-ass week. Appreciate you all. Love you guys. Thank you.